Okay, for our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Gore. What are your views on placing requested changes to the city charter on the ballot for residents to decide?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and define that, since request of changes, I don't know if we would all know what that means. So I'm going to say ballot box planning. And I'm not opposed, or I'm not for ballot box planning, about going out to the residents and saying, what do you think about this really complex issue? We want you to vote on whether or not we're going to build in this area. That's why we have an elected board, elected city council. These decisions about what takes place in our community, they're complicated and challenging. There's all sorts of mandates that we have to address. There's all sorts of regulations that have to be addressed. And ultimately, why we elect people is for them to make good decisions on our behalf. So I think that we really have to allow those elected officials to do the hard work, the research, et cetera, to make those challenging decisions about what happens in our community. Obviously, with the input of our residents and listening to the concerns of our residents, but I'm not in favor of ballot box planning. I don't think that's the best thing for local communities.
Mr. Mendonça?
I don't believe that it is your place to have to make a decision such as that. You know, someone comes to you, it's almost like, you know, cornering you and saying, okay, you have to decide right now, you know, time's ticking, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. No one makes good decisions under pressure like that. You know, and depending on how it's phrased or how it's worded or how it's presented to you, you might mean to vote one way, and the way it's worded, you vote totally contrary to what you intended to vote for. Again, my slogan is our city, your voice, and there's a reason for that. It's not, obviously I want an educated, I want a diligent resident pool, and obviously when you come to the city council meetings, you're doing that and you're addressing your issues, but that's what we're up here for. You're electing people to be responsible, to be your voice, to be an advocate, to look out for your best interests, so you don't have to worry about being cornered and having to make these decisions that you're not sure of. You know, let us do the heavy lifting. Let us do the research on it. You're going to know what we're deciding. It's in the minutes. They're posted online. You can come to the meeting. We're totally transparent of what we're doing up here. So instead of you having to bear that burden, let us do that for you. You know, elect a responsible council, and you know, I know personally, if I'm elected, you know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm a good researcher, and I'm going to look at something 6 ways a Sunday, you know, to make sure that it's going to make sense. And I think that's something that, in this particular case, needs to be done. You can't just haphazardly make a decision like this because you know, it's on the ballot and you vote for it. It's a no-go.
Ms. Rakucci?
You know, I think most of the things that we can take care of are at a city council level or in that kind of a forum. But I think once in a while something does come up that residents get mad about or want to look at. I'm not one for signing anything of any kind at a grocery store because I just don't like to have people there, and I don't like to do that. And I don't like, the same thing with Mr. Mendonça, I don't like to all of a sudden try to make a decision or read something if that's, you know, voting yes or no on something. So I like to, you know, really think about it. But I think to have your option out there that you could look at something, if it becomes something that maybe that's serious, I'm hoping if there is something to that magnitude that we're able to deal with it at a council level or, you know, in a different kind of form. But I think it needs to be out there just in case.
Mr. Alvord?
One of the most eye-opening things to me as I go around and knock on doors and talk to our community is there are many people in our community that have bought into a lot of scare tactics. And generally most people are up on top of things, but we do have some ignorance in our community, reading letters that are misrepresenting facts and believing things that are not accurate. And it would make me very concerned to have the community making decisions when they're based on a lot of fear. I have talked to many people that think they're drinking well water and it's poisoning them. You know, there was a test for a few months and we haven't had well water in a long time, but they believe that. And it was hard to try to convince them that's actually not true. And And our city manager, everybody's worried about his salary. Our city manager has the lowest compensation per $1 million of budget of any of the surrounding cities, Rockland, West Sac, Reading, Lodi. They're focusing on things that are not, you don't see the whole picture. And it gets me a little bit worried about when the community kind of gets a general feeling of things when they're not really educated on the actual facts. So it would make me a little nervous having them get into the charter because that's a pretty serious document. But hire your representatives and make sure they're listening to you. That's the important part of our city. We want to hire people that listen. And if they're not listening, get somebody else.
Mr. Osnick?
In 1997, we went with an initiative to repeal the utility users tax. Under Prop 218, that's illegal. So the city council wouldn't listen, so we did get enough signatures, put it on the ballot. It passed, and the city took us to court 6 times. It cost the city $248,000 in order to settle the account. They should never have done that. There are times when it's necessary to do an initiative. That's why it's been made a part of the law. The initiative that we're circulating today is a lot like what we did when we put the balance to have the boundaries of the city limited. Well, the city finally woke up and did put a boundary on it. Today we have an initiative to lower the city management confidential group's pay. They negotiate their own pay. They then go and negotiate with the unions and so on. So it's not fair. We feel that pensions are out of control, so one way to get them down is to lower the salaries. Thank you.
Ms. Garcia?
Okay, I'm going to talk in relation to what Mr. Osnick just discussed, which was the ballot initiative that is currently out there at your grocery stores. The people that are out there are not telling you the facts. There are things that are misconstrued and they're not truths. I can't begin to tell you how detrimental the initiative would be for our city and the effects to the quality of life if that should pass. It would create a decimated workforce and would have a huge effect on our city and the quality of providing direct services, and oversight of contracts by our employees would diminish. When you look at the scope of oversight for a city our size, which is our city manager oversees a $500 million budget, and look at the compensation that our city manager is paid right now, when you look at that in comparison to private company, his pay is rather right in line with what is out there right now as far as public entities go. In 2009, when our city manager parted ways with us, we offered a drastically much lower compensation package to the city manager that we have right now. I can't stress enough the negative effects that this would cause in our residents' property values and the quality of life that you have trusted and come to enjoy would really be diminished. So I would warn you against that initiative that's out there right now.
Okay, for our next question, we're going to begin with Mr. Mendonça. What would you recommend Roseville do to preserve its general fund revenue streams?
Well, first of all, I would definitely look at what we had as far as revenue stream. I would see what's working and what's not. First things first, you have to always see what you have coming in before you know what you have to go out. Once that was all established and it didn't look like we were looking at any being in the red or any liabilities, I would like to see us kind of diversify some things. I'm a firm believer in open areas. I'd like to see us reinvest in different parks, or walkways or open areas. That would be something as far as a general fund. Obviously, we can't ignore the fact that we do have other areas of town that could probably use some work. Downtown, some of the facilities down there could use some assistance. We have some city projects that could be funded. But again, these are all things that, because it's coming out of the general fund, I would definitely want to make sure that this was something the community was going to support. Again, I'm not someone that's going to spend your money and say, oh, by the way, here's the memo. Last week, I decided to dip into the fund and move it over here to something that might not be something that's really necessary. It might not be something that's really urgent at the time, and I may have overlooked something that was, or the council may have overlooked that. So I want to make sure that it's brought up to you, first of all. Second of all, know what we have, and then address the most severe projects first, and then work our way backwards to the less severe.
Ms. Rakucci?
I think basically you have to spend less and save more. You know, you have to balance your budget. We work real hard to try to balance ours. We call it a structural deficit. What that means, there's a couple different funds that we didn't take money out of, we just couldn't put money in. And so we're going to be working real hard to maintain those areas, and one of them is rehabilitation of our existing buildings, similar to what we're in here right now in our library. If it needs to have a new roof, that we make sure that we have enough of the funding for it. So it's making sure that we're fiscally sound, and that if we're going to go and do something, does it make economic sense to do it right now? And that's probably the biggest concern I have is, you know, if we're purchasing anything, is this a wise purchase now? What are we doing with that? I mean, should we buy a building now or not buy a building? Many times I look at that, and sometimes I'm saying no, because I'm looking at a bigger picture of thinking that that's not maybe the right thing to do. But essentially, what am I looking at my general fund is to make sure what you do at your own house right now, make sure that what money you're taking in, you can pay your bills. It's no different at city. It's bigger and it's your money.
Mr. Albert?
City of Roseville is doing really well as far as its general fund goes. We have very little debt, unlike a lot of cities that have had bankruptcy issues. Our city council has done a good job, and our staff, of keeping a nice reserve set aside. When the economy goes down, we can cut, and we can do more with less. And our city's pretty good at that. The thing that bothers me as a citizen and a business owner is you hear fiscal responsibility. I use this phrase before. I get tired of hearing this when it means take taxpayer dollars and hide them under a mattress and wait for the economy to get better. Fiscal responsibility is taking our taxpayer dollars and investing them in things that pay back to our citizens. When we do bidding contracts and we take the lowest bidder, and we say that's saving us money, but that lowest bidder isn't even a Roseville business, and we send huge amounts of money out of our city to some other company and somebody else's home equity payments and somebody else's property tax and sales revenue when they shop in their city, that's not building up our economy. That's a poor use of our taxpayer dollars. I want to see some changes to where we're actually building our economy, and I've got a lot of neat ideas along these lines, and there's some other people that agree with this. Our policemen, half of our policemen don't live in the city of Roseville. Let's entice them to move here. Let's give them some incentive to move here, because if we've got those police cars sitting in our neighborhoods, it's making the neighborhoods safer. Those jobs are here, the home equity is here, they're shopping local. That's a way to build up our economy. All right, let's use our general fund for ways of actually increasing our revenue in our city.
Mr. Osnick?
There was a report in the Sacramento Bee that the city has put up $28 million in order to do the master plan in downtown. The question that they raised was, how are they going to pay for that $28 million project? The city has done its due diligence by putting in the auto mall. I had a hand in that. I was the one that suggested we put the Galleria where it is now today and gave it the name when I was on the city council. I put together a finite economic development plan, which the city is now following. We need to get more development that pays for itself, not that we pay for it.
Ms. Garcia?
Thank you. You know, our city depends on, in our general fund, mainly on sales tax and property tax in order to sustain. And it's a challenge every day to make sure that our revenues match our expenses and also maintain our city service levels. I think that since we had the downturn in the economy, it's important that we fill the vacancies, the vacant buildings that we have right now. We're starting to do that. We need to create more jobs, bring more business into our community. And as Mr. Osnick said, that will generate more tax revenue for our city. And I think that we need to be looking more of that and also streamlining. You know, in the downturn of the economy, we really had to downsize the city of Roseville's organization and really bring it down to a size that we were able to manage in light of we had to lay off 30 employees, and we actually, through attrition, lost a total of 180 employees. So we have downsized the organization, and in that effort, I think it was important that, we are now able to continue on that new level and be able to attract more business to take care of the sales tax. And I think that that may help with our new revenue streams. Thank you.
Ms. Gore?
The city of Roseville is very fortunate to have a very strong tax base. The Galleria, the Auto Mall, those things provide the sales taxes we need for our general fund. So that's terrific. But in this challenging economy, it's a challenging time, right? We don't have all the dollars that we need. So one of my priorities is to make sure that we stimulate the economy. We need to have additional jobs in our community. We need to fill up the vacant office space in our community. That's important. We need sales tax. We need jobs in our community. So I'm committed to working towards stimulating our economy. And those things it means looking at how do we retain our businesses? How do we attract new businesses to our community? Currently, the city of Roseville is partnering with 21 local businesses who are willing to step up with their dollars for the next 3 years to invest in marketing this community to businesses outside the region, to bring businesses into our community to produce more jobs and provide more sales tax. That's important. We need to have different programs like that, perhaps different incentives to bring businesses to our community. Ultimately, sales tax is a wonderful thing, and we have to make sure that we find different ways to increase those dollars to go to our general fund, and then we'll have the dollars that we need to provide the core services to our residents.